August 17, 1998. A nuclear power went bankrupt. They borrowed billions, paid it back with more borrowed billions. It was a Ponzi scheme. The IMF gave them $22 billion. It vanished in weeks. Russians watched their life savings disappear overnight. The oligarchs got richer. The bankers were rescued. And what rose from the ashes was born from silence. August 17, 1998. Russia, a nuclear superpower, told the world it couldn't pay its debts. Just months earlier, investors trusted Russia. Money poured in. The ruble was stable. Growth looked inevitable. Russia had opened its economy to the world, privatized state assets, sold bonds to foreign banks. The West called it progress. Then oil prices collapsed. Russia's main export, its economic lifeline, dropped from $20 a barrel to under 10. Tax revenues vanished. The government couldn't pay salaries. Teachers, soldiers, doctors went months without wages. The official story said it was bad luck, commodity prices, global forces beyond control. But the truth never appeared on Russian television. The government had been borrowing billions in short-term debt, bonds called GKOs, treasury bills that matured in weeks, not years. They were paying 18% interest, sometimes higher. This wasn't a mistake. It was architecture. Russia was running a Ponzi scheme at the sovereign level, borrowing new money to pay old debts, offering impossible returns to keep foreign capital flowing in. Why would anyone lend to Russia at such high rates? Because the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, was backing them. The implicit guarantee, the bailout insurance. Foreign investors believed Russia was too big, too nuclear, too dangerous to fail. But Russia's central bank was hemorrhaging foreign currency reserves. Defending the ruble, keeping it pegged to the dollar, they spent $6 billion in July alone trying to hold the line. By August, the reserves were nearly empty. And then the Asian financial crisis hit. Currencies collapsed across Thailand, Indonesia, South Korea. Global investors panicked, pulled money from all emerging markets. Russia was next in line, and everyone knew it. The Russian government had a choice: devalue the ruble, default on the debt, or beg the IMF for more money. They tried all three. The IMF approved a $22 billion rescue package in July, but it wasn't enough. The money disappeared into the black hole of debt repayment. Oligarchs moved billions offshore. Capital flight accelerated. Within weeks, the $22 billion was gone, and nothing had changed. August 17, 1998. Prime Minister Sergei Kiriyenko appeared on television. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. Russia would devalue the ruble, freeze foreign debt payments for 90 days, and restructure its domestic bonds. The word he didn't say was default, but that's what it was. Russia had $140 billion in debt and told the world it wouldn't pay. Not the foreign banks, not the bondholders, not anyone. The ruble collapsed instantly, from 6 rubles per dollar to 21 in a matter of days. 70% of its value erased. Russians who had savings in rubles watched them vanish overnight. Supermarkets emptied, not because there was no food, but because no one knew what anything cost anymore. Prices changed by the hour. Bread that was 10 rubles in the morning was 30 by evening. Pensioners lined up at banks to withdraw their life savings, but the banks had no cash. ATMs were empty, branches closed without warning. People who had worked 40 years under Soviet promises discovered their rubles were worthless paper. Foreign banks lost billions. Hedge funds collapsed. Long-term capital management, run by Nobel Prize winners, nearly destroyed the global financial system because of Russian exposure. But the bankers were rescued. The Russian people were not. Factories shut down. Workers went unpaid for months. Some were paid in goods instead of money. Light bulbs or shoes or vodka, whatever the factory produced. Barter replaced currency in parts of Russia. A nuclear power had regressed to a medieval economy. The poverty rate doubled from 15% to 30% in a single year. Millions fell below the subsistence line. Malnutrition increased. Life expectancy dropped. The collapse wasn't abstract. It wasn't charts. It was bodies. It was hunger. It was desperation. And while ordinary Russians suffered, the oligarchs thrived. They had moved their money offshore weeks before the default. They bought up distressed assets for pennies. Oil companies, banks, factories. The crisis was their opportunity, their transfer of wealth on a scale never seen before. Vladimir Putin rose to power in the aftermath. The chaos, the humiliation, the collapse created the conditions for authoritarian control. Russians traded democracy for stability. They wanted someone strong, someone who wouldn't let the West dictate terms. The default shaped the Russia we see today. The IMF learned nothing. They would repeat the same playbook in Argentina, in Greece, in dozens of countries. Lend money to corrupt governments, demand austerity from the poor, bail out the banks when it collapses. The pattern never changes, only the location. Russia recovered, but trust never did. An entire generation learned that savings are illusions, that institutions lie, that the system protects itself, not you. They learned to hide money, to distrust banks, to expect betrayal. August 17, 1998, the day a nuclear power admitted it was bankrupt, wasn't the end of Russia's story. It was the beginning of something darker. Born from humiliation, built on resentment, sustained by control. The default didn't just collapse an economy, it collapsed a worldview. And what rose from those ashes was born from silence.